Others in support of AB 243.
Chair, Senators, my name is Hezekiah Allen. I'm speaking today on behalf of the Emerald Growers Association. We are a statewide trade association of medical cannabis farmers, producers, and small businesses. We are in support of this, though, given this is an environmental quality committee, I want to raise a concern about plant count. And I just want to say very clearly that growing more smaller plants is a water conservation method. Over the last several years, I've done hundreds of best management practices workshops with cannabis farmers around the state. A plant count driven method will force us to grow fewer larger plants. It will take longer season to grow them, and we will use more water to do it. So we are in strong support of everything in this. The fee is great. We want to pay to deal with it. This is how other businesses are treated. But I did want to raise that concern for this committee. Thank you. And Assembly Member, awesome work. Thank you.
Good point. We'll come back to the plant size. Others?
Hi, Karen Liggett, and I'm here to support the bill. I give 3 articles to the Assemblyman to look at, but one was in today's paper, 617 plants, and it had pot in a child's room. That was in our area. One is $4.5 million worth of value that was in Antelope, and another one was 900 plants, 950 plants. He has the articles. You could look at them if you'd like.
Thank you for your testimony.
And more pesticides because of this. I'm going to need those.
Others in support.
Hello there. My name is Luke Bruner. I'm a board member of the California Cannabis Industry Association and the chairman of our legislative committee, and we strongly support this in concept. I'm also a constituent of Assemblyman Woods in Humboldt County, and this has significant support within our community. Thank you.
Good morning. Christian Molina on behalf of the Sierra Club, and we support this bill.
Thank you.
Kelly Doe on behalf of California Lake Conservation Voters in support.
Eric Carlson, Associated California Loggers, in support.
Julia Carrera, Small Farmers Association. We want to thank Assemblymember Wood for his efforts and his staff. We fully support this bill. It includes our regulatory self-regulating program, and we're excited to see it move forward. Thank you.
Kirsten Kolpicki with the California Forestry Association in support of the bill.
Mr. Chair, Chris McKaylee on behalf of the Humboldt and Mendocino Redwood Companies in support.
Good morning, Pablo Garza with the Nature Conservancy. We are supportive amended, but greatly appreciate the Assembly members' leadership on this issue. We would just simply like stronger language requiring compliance with applicable environmental laws and regulations. And we've been talking to the author's office and appreciate that dialogue, but thank you.
Stacy Heaton with the Rural County Representatives of California, also speaking on behalf of CSAC. We actually don't have a position on this bill. However, we have been working with the author throughout this process so that we can get to a support position. It's our understanding he's going to be taking a number of amendments that will address some of our concerns about strengthening language on local land use and fee authority. We do still have some concerns about this bill not being tied to a licensing scheme, but we're committed to continue working with the author so that we can get to a support position. Thank you.
Justin Oldfield with the California Cattlemen's Association. We too don't have a position on the bill currently. However, we're very excited to be working with Mr. Wood to hopefully come into support of the bill over the recess. And just very briefly, the majority of the lands that were mentioned today where the environmental damage occurs, ranchers owner manage. And so for the first time, this bill would bring real money to the table for enforcement and cleanup. And so those issues are very important. And we hope to continue the conversation. Thank you.
All right, let's hear opposition to AB 243 and pot plant regulations.
Hi, Dale Geringer with California Normal and one of the original proponents of Proposition 215. We support the intent of this bill, but we think as written it will actually not work at all and be unenforceable. The basic problem is it disincentivize compliance with medical cannabis laws with this fee and tax. As was described earlier, the current $50 per plant fee they've suggested is dysfunctional. It will not work. In my home city of Oakland, where we have indoor grows, the indoor plants have yields in the ounces. These outdoor plants have yields in the pounds. That completely does not work. Now, there are certainly more sophisticated tax schemes that could be concocted. It's sort of the 11th hour to be discussing this. This is a very complex issue that I've been in discussions with lots of state and stakeholder people over the last year, but it's not something I think that at this 11th hour can be tackled properly. But I think the bigger issue here is you're setting up a mechanism that makes it very difficult for medical cannabis people to comply, but non-medical illegal growers don't pay the tax or go through any of these other hoops. So you will not have, this disincentivizes medical cannabis growing. You will not have compliance with this bill. I will say also it really conflicts with another bill, which I recommend to you all. AB 266 is a comprehensive bill that regulates all of the medical cannabis industry, including distribution and cultivation, and which addresses all of the environmental issues that we're talking about here, all of the Department of Fish and Wildlife and so forth. I recommend that bill, but this bill is at this point, half-baked and untimely. Thank you.
Next witness.
Hello, I'm Lynette Davies with Crusaders for Patients' Rights. I'm also representing the California Coalition. And we are definitely in opposition because of the medical issues that are involved. We understand the need for good environmental protection on cultivation, but we also have good laws that are on the books that aren't being used, apparently. If we're having incredible bad issues, bad players, this doesn't change them because they're already illegal entities, and illegal entities don't care about the laws. So we need to implement the laws that we already have on the books for environmental protection. What this does, it adds a $50 tax per plant, but it also takes away the right for patients to be able to collectively cultivate and have their access brought back into a dispensary, because it specifically states you cannot sell, you cannot donate, or you cannot share. Provide, exactly. So what it does, it puts in a complete commercial market by doing that, but it doesn't have an outlet for it. Right now, I believe the Senate or Assembly members stated that there's no taxes paid on cultivation. There is a tax, there is a sales tax on every cultivated or every plant that is sold from a dispensary. Not only is there a tax right now in the city of Sacramento of 8.5%, there's an excess tax or a use tax of an additional 4%. So there is tax revenue that is being already expensed on these plants. Okay. So patients, if you came back and you gave them a $50 per plant tax, we don't even know if that plant's going to live, for one thing, and that's if they're lucky enough to cultivate it. Is there going to be a refund on that $50 per tax if it doesn't live? And who's going to be actually responsible at the dispensing level? Are we going to be responsible for selling to a patient not having a tag on it? And how are we going to identify who's coming in as a patient to who's coming in as a supplier? And where are the tags going to come from? There's just too many unanswered questions in this. And then many of our cities through the surrounding areas, the counties did not want to deal with cultivation, so we've had to do referendums in order to have the right to cultivate. Now you have to have a permit. When we did the referendums, permits weren't questioned. So do we have to go back to the same body, put another vote in to get a permit process? Because right now the counties didn't want to even have cultivation. There's just too many areas in this that are not addressed, and so we respectfully ask for an opposition on this.
Next witness in opposition.
I'm Marcia Blount, president of the Brownie Mary Democratic Club of Sacramento County. We oppose this because we think it's going to be taken care of in AB in 266. Thank you.
Rich Miller, Health Education, Legal Patients' Rights, American Alliance for Medical Cannabis. We oppose this. We feel it's overtaxing. We also feel that the tax base is not affordable for the patients. There's regulatory licensing fees that they cannot afford. Also, it erodes the patients' rights for the Compassionate Use Acts and does not allow patients to grow with 5 or more patients. In areas that have bans, like my county in Placer and Fresno County, those patients can't collectively cultivate in their county, and they require other counties to be able to do so. This would erode that right for those patients to be able to grow in those counties that allow, because it puts a limit of 5 patients per collective. So I oppose this. Thank you.
Hi, Michael Green, Fresno Cannabis Association. We do want to praise the Assembly member for putting some really good work into, I believe, the structure of how the tax could be collected on the cultivation side. We do share concerns that have been expressed here as to the actual level of the tax. And of course, in places like Fresno, where it's all academic because they have banned all types of dispensaries and cultivation, any revenues that might accrue from this will be non-existent. And in terms of the geography of California, dispensary bans and outdoor growing bans are the growing trend. And as the Assembly moves toward regulation, you have to kind of take that landscape into account. So we oppose unless amended, but we do have hope that it could be amended. Thank you.
All right, let's, we're done with input. Assemblymember, can you comment on one of the witnesses talking about the smaller plants and the water conservation that goes into the encouragement of smaller plants versus giant plants? And then obviously there's some concern about, just because I want to be funny, maybe there's a per leaf tax or per pound tax, or rather than per plant tax, some way to look at product and do what you need to do.
I appreciate that, and I'd be happy to address a lot of the concerns, but I'll if those are the two you want to hear, I'll save the rest for my close then, if that's okay. Well, first of all, we, as I stated, I thought fairly clearly that we are moving away from the $50 tax per plant. We're working closely with the BOE. I spoke with the chairman of the BOE last week, who offered whatever resources I need to be able to move forward on this. I've met with two of the other members as well. We are moving towards a per ounce charge on cannabis flowers, a per ounce charge on cannabis leaves, and a small, very small fee on immature plants. So I get it. I'm here. I hear what people are concerned about. You'll see in my bill there is no limit on plants. That is going to be up to local jurisdictions. And part of the concern I have is that I think local land use decisions should be made around available resources. So if there are not water resources, if there is an inappropriate area to grow, or it is a bad zoning for that, I think that locals ought to have control over that. So so I think I addressed that part of it. I can't remember your first question. I kind of went on there a little.
Best management.
Oh, the water with water.
If you might save more water using smaller plants, and that may be an encouragement.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And that is one of the reasons that we listen to when people bring up concerns, and we are responding to that. And I think that this actually having an excise fee on the actual product at the end of the day makes sense. I still do believe that a tagging program is valuable. It's actually used in Colorado. It's nice to know where the product came from and where it ends up, so that if there's a problem at a dispensary with a health issue, you can actually trace it back to the source. I don't see why people would object to that, and if I remove the fee from that, I would really have a hard time understanding why people might object to that. I will tell you that all these bills are being amended. This is a very complicated subject, and even just the environmental aspect of this and trying to work on cultivation has been really, really challenging. 266, while it mentions the environment, does not deal anywhere close to what I'm doing. I've been working very closely with those authors on that, and they have at this point allowed me to continue working on these particular issues. So to say that you want to support 266's framework, I think doesn't make a lot of sense, because there really isn't anything there at this point. So I guess if you don't want to support anything, that's fine. We are getting support from cultivators on this. They actually want to be regulated in some way. That's a really, really big deal. Americans, while you've heard from a couple of advocacy groups here for patients, Americans for Safe Access has no position on this. So all of the bills, including 266, and you heard the concern about collectives, are moving away from collectives. Why? Because they've been widely abused, quite frankly. An individual patient that can grow for themselves plus 5 other, a small group for 5 others, is a system that I think actually works better than the broader collectives, and that's why you see every one of these bills is moving away from collectives. So taxes vary. I guess if you've never been taxed before, anything we do is considered overtaxation. So I get that, I guess. So anyway.
Okay. Questions of the author on this issue? Senator Leno.
Assemblyman, you're doing the Lord's work here. Never easy and always challenging. I will be supporting the bill today. Not that there aren't questions,
appreciate that,
viable questions that have been raised, but that's the nature of the process. And we haven't done much short of the success of SB 140 by Senator Vasconcellos so many years ago, of which I was a principal co-author. Because it is such a challenging subject matter and there are so many constituencies to work with and to listen to, but we need vehicles continue to move forward so that something can come of it. One question I have is, just from your own vision, should there be a successful ballot measure next year that will have some regulatory scheme beyond the allowance for recreational use and probably some fee/taxation as a part of it, how would what you're doing, and I understand you're moving away from the $50 per plant, but how do you see the two working together?
Well, I think they will work together. I do. We will continue to have people who resist coming into compliance with regulations around the environment. There are, quite frankly, a lot of people out there. There are a lot of farmers, let's put it this way, there are a lot of farmers that actually want to do the right thing and are actually coming forward now with the pilot project. So it is a, I still think there's going to be an immense value to this, because I do think that even with legalization for recreational use, an industry is going from no regulation to heavy regulation or potentially taxation. There is going to be a thriving black market at some point unless we get this part of it right. So, so even with that, there will be challenges around land use, around watershed enforcement and how water is taken. There still will be a lot of environmental damage that has to be cleaned up, that hasn't been, and there's still going to need to be resources for law enforcement to make sure that people who are actually trying to do the right thing are doing the right thing, and that we can distinguish the good players from the bad actors.
It's easier said than done, but I do think that the medical cannabis community needs to work together to take full responsibility for the environmental degradation that's ongoing right now, and also of the water concerns. To be just on the beneficiary end without any concern or care for where it's coming from, doesn't fully embrace the greater picture. I would imagine you've had some conversations with Americans for Safe Access?
Our door has been open. We've probably had more meetings with advocates, stakeholders. I lost track a long time ago. We continue to meet with anybody who wants to talk to us about this issue. Has been open since December when we first started talking about it, and will continue to be open. I'm committed to making this right. We'll work hard through the recess to do that. So, you did bring. I meant to use my prop. I apologize. Can I use my prop?
I've been looking at this picture.
What are we looking at? And then I have one more question for you.
Tell us what it is.
Okay, this was actually taken about 3 weeks ago. I believe it's in Mendocino County. This is a giant water bladder. You think of the old days when you had actually a hot water bottle. Imagine this. This is like on steroids. This actually, the land was cleared without a permit. There was forest land here, so that was illegal. This was actually constructed on site, and we can turn that around for the folks in the audience if they like at some point. But this was constructed on site, and the capacity by measure, that's not a doll on top of this thing. That's a real live person. This actually, by calculation, stored 587,000 gallons of water that was illegally diverted and illegally stored in that water bladder. That's the kind of thing that we're seeing up there. Lots of tanks and things, crudely constructed, streams diverted, pumped out with little or no regard for anybody downstream.
You had mentioned some water per plant consumption in these kinds of grow areas. Do you know how that compares to hydroponic production?
I think certainly in more controlled environments where you can control humidity and heat.
Which is the kind of production we have in my urban.
Exactly. You're going to have lower water consumption there. But in Mendocino, Humboldt, Trinity counties, these are Mediterranean dry, arid areas. These are actually not the ideal place to grow cannabis. They're ideal because they're out of sight, but they're really not ideal because soil amendments and things have to be brought in. So in areas that are outdoor grows or outdoor hybrids where they have these hoop houses or greenhouses, they consume a lot of water. The smaller plants obviously don't, and so I do respect Mr. Allen's point about that. But these larger plants, as they get bigger, they are big water consumers, and the estimates really vary pretty widely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Continued success with your efforts.
Thank you.
I know that they're very sincere.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
That is a motion. Do you have any questions? There were other items that you wanted to touch on in your close. Please close.
I think I tried to hit those as I probably abused my privilege there, but but I just want to close by saying, thank you for the opportunity to present the bill. While there are multiple bills in this session that seek to create significant regulatory structures, the environmental issues have received very little consideration. So I recognize that the addition of the guidelines that seek to regulate the actual cultivation of marijuana may create some conflicts with other pending legislation, but you have to start somewhere, and I will commit to you that I will continue to work to resolve the differences, working with the other authors, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Assistant, please call the roll.
Item 6, AB 243 by Assemblymember Wood. The motion is due pass and refer to Committee on Appropriations. Senators Wieckowski.
Aye.
Wieckowski, aye. Gaines. Bates. Hill. Jackson. Leno.
Aye.
Leno, aye. Pavley. Pavley, aye. 3-0.
You got 3 votes. We'll keep that on call. Have a pleasant afternoon.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Assemblymember Williams is here on item number 18, AB 901 by Assemblymember Gordon. On behalf of Assemblymember Gordon, I thank you.
You can just call me Rich Gordon today. Chair and Senators, I appreciate you allowing me to present AB 901 as a co-author of Assemblymember Gordon's bill. California has set a goal of achieving a recycling rate of 75% by 2020. Many actions will be needed to achieve that goal, but most importantly, it will be necessary to have accurate and timely data on waste disposal and recycling. Currently, data is sent to counties from disposal facilities, and then counties forward that information on to CalRecycle. AB 901 would simplify this process by requiring waste disposal facilities and recycling and compost operations to report directly to CalRecycle. They would do so using the electronic disposal reporting system that is already in place at CalRecycle. It would also strengthen CalRecycle's fraud enforcement authority by allowing the imposition of civil penalties against those who falsify or fail to submit timely, complete, and accurate waste flow information. 2/3 of DRS reports are late, incomplete, or inaccurate. Senators, our current system for verifying that people are actually complying with our recycled laws are full of holes, and timely and accurate reports are essential if we are to achieve our statewide goal of 75% recycling and to make it meaningful so it's actually 75%. This bill also specifies what types of waste disposal records are subject to inspection and copying by CalRecycle, and prohibits a government entity from disclosing specified information unless necessary as part of an administrative or judicial proceeding. It streamlines CalRecycle's authority for requiring recycling facilities to submit information on the final disposition of material those facilities accept and process, by eliminating the requirement that facilities identify the county of origin of the recycled material they handled. The proposed enforcement authority in the bill mirrors the authority that CalRecycle already has in the waste tire disposal program. Lastly, Assemblymember Gordon is also proposing an author's amendment in the committee analysis, which removes references to the Public Records Act in AB 901 and replaces these references with provisions of the Public Resources Code concerning the availability of documents and protection of industry trade secrets. As a reassurance to AB 901 stakeholders, Assemblymember Gordon is planning to submit a letter to the Journal stating that it remains his intention that the amendments suggested in the committee analysis are designed to accomplish this. On behalf of Assemblymember Gordon, I ask for your aye vote.
We appreciate the bill. It's, reporting requirements that were set up in 1992. Seems timely. First witness.
Mr. Chair, members, Mark Murray with the Environmental Group Californians Against Waste. As this committee well knows, the state has a 75% recycling goal. We continue to have a 50% minimum waste diversion requirement on every city and county in the state of California. Now, we don't have garbage police that go out there and monitor where does all this stuff go. We don't account for all the recycling that happens in each jurisdiction. These local governments are dependent on, the determinant of whether or not they're meeting that 50% minimum is a disposal reporting system. So they're relying on a network of regional, not every city and county has their own disposal facility. They're counting on these regional disposal facilities to accurately report not just what gets disposed, but actually what jurisdiction did that come from. So local governments, in order to make sure that they're not getting penalized with somebody else's waste, they need to know if that material goes out of county, what jurisdiction did it come from? And we are finding that there are disposal facilities that are misreporting, counting more disposal in one community than another community. In the state of California, because we've left it up to local governments to implement the waste reduction and recycling programs as they see fit, some jurisdictions have taken a different approach. That approach includes a tipping fee surcharge, for example, in some communities to support waste reduction and recycling in their communities. It is not unheard of for a generator of solid waste to want to avoid paying that tipping fee surcharge and not accounting for that material properly. We have the authority to do an accounting system. The mechanisms have been in place. We need to enforce that. It's good for both our reporting of recycling, but it's also intended to prevent local governments from having misrepresentation of their disposal and potentially facing a $10,000 a day fine because they've been handed disposal that wasn't really theirs. Urge an aye vote.
Thanks.
Good afternoon, Kara Martinson on behalf of the California State Association of Counties in strong support. We feel this bill does a few simple things. It increases transparency, it provides enforcement capabilities, and it also streamlines the reporting requirements and allows counties to access some additional information so that we can accurately record our disposal and recycling in California. Urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Kelly Astor on behalf of the Inland Empire, Orange County, and LA Trade Associations listed in support in the analysis. Also want to express the gratitude of both those organizations and of the CRRC, the California Refuse Recycling Council, for all the author and staff's hard work. On the issue of the PRA, we're particularly grateful that the author has clarified that while we are eliminating the government code amendments in this bill, the bill still does intend to create an exemption from the Public Records Act. It's just doing so in the Public Resources Code. And based on that understanding, we're very pleased to support this measure. Urge an aye vote.